Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marson, and today we're taking a look at Exodus chapter 2. So in the first chapter, we saw Pharaoh act out of fear. He enslaved and tortured and attempted genocide on the Israelites. And we saw that his fear of the Israelites, more than the fear of disobeying God, led him to justify these terrible and horrible atrocities. Now, for God to keep his promises, these atrocities need to be dealt with. And, as with many stories throughout the Bible, God's plan for redemption begins with a baby. Now, a man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got him a wicker basket and covered it over with tar and pitch. Then she put the child into it and set it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to find out what would happen to him. So in the midst of Pharaoh's genocide, an unnamed couple from the tribe of Levi have a beautiful baby boy. And to avoid Pharaoh, the mother puts her baby into a basket that was waterproofed with tar and pitch. These are the same substances that waterproofed Noah's Ark in Genesis chapter 6. The parallel is that God's plan for deliverance of his people is wrapped up in the survival of this one man, or in this case, this one baby. They were both placed in a dangerous situation, surrounded by death on all sides, and had to trust, against all odds, in God. Of course, that synopsis could apply to many people throughout the biblical story, not least Jesus himself. Now, here we also hear about the baby's older sister following the basket down the river to see what happens. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the Nile, with her maidens walking alongside the Nile. And she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid, and she brought it to her. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the boy was crying. And she had pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go ahead." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. The child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses, and said, "Because I drew him out of the water." Now, who should end up finding this baby except for Pharaoh's own daughter? And she, unlike her father, has pity on the Hebrew baby boy. Now, because the sister was following the baby, she jumps in and says that she can find a nurse for the Hebrew baby if Pharaoh's daughter wants her to. She says yes, and unbeknownst to her, the sister gets the baby's real biological mother. And as a result, the family ends up becoming somewhat servants of the royal house. They're still enslaved, but it's a much cushier job and it pays a lot better than making bricks. Now, Pharaoh's daughter actually names the baby Moses, and that's related to the Hebrew word mashah, which means to draw or to pull out, because she drew him out of the water. But it also foreshadows that through Moses, God will draw his people out of slavery in Egypt and bring them into the land of Canaan. Now, it came about in those days, when Moses had grown up, that he went out to his brethren and looked on their hard labors. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that, and when he saw that there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Now, because Moses was raised with his biological mother as his nurse, we can assume that he knew the whole time he was a Hebrew. He obviously feels some sort of association with them. He goes out and sees that they're being abused, and it provokes him to anger. And he decides that the best way to deliver his people from violence is with more violence. He kills the Egyptian slave master and covers it up, much like Cain back in Genesis 4. But of course, in his mind, he has to kill the Egyptian to free his real family. They're suffering and need deliverance. Someone's got to do something about it. Moses decides that person is going to be him. He's going to free his people through violent revolution. He went out the next day, and behold, 2 Hebrews were fighting with each other. And he said to the offender, "Why are you striking your companion?" But he said, "Who made you a prince or a judge over us? Are you intending to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and said, "Surely the matter has become known." That plan backfires massively. First off, Moses' little murder has been found out, and 2 random Hebrews even know that he's responsible for it. So there's no telling who else knows. Second, now the Hebrews are fighting with each other and abusing each other. Moses' violence didn't increase brotherhood among the Israelites, it just increased more violence. And third, the Israelites don't see Moses as one of them. They see him as a pampered prince, raised in the house of Pharaoh, whether he's ethnically Hebrew or not. For all those reasons, Moses' revolution is not going the way he thought it would. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian. He sat down by a well. Pharaoh indeed does hear about the murder Moses caused, and he tries to finish the job he missed in chapter 1. Moses has no other choice but to run away, to abandon the house that raised him, and to abandon his brothers who need deliverance. He ends up in Midian, next to a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Then the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. When they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "Why have you come back so soon today?" So they said, "An Egyptian delivered us from the hands of the shepherds, and what's more, he even drew the water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Where is he then? Why is it that you have left the man behind? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses was willing to dwell with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses. Then she gave birth to a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." We see that Moses hasn't lost his passion for justice when some shepherds try to abuse and steal water from these daughters of a priest in Midian. Moses steps in and allows the daughters to get their water, and when Reuel, the priest, hears about this, he invites him to come stay with him at his house. Moses meeting these women at the well reminds us of our introductions to Rebekah and Rachel back in Genesis 24 and 29. And just like they became matriarchs for the house of Israel, Moses meets his wife, Zipporah, there at a well too. But at his core, we see that Moses still doesn't feel like he belongs. That's evidenced by what he names his son, Gershom, related to the Hebrew phrase Gershom, which means a stranger there. Now it came about in the course of those many days that the king of Egypt died, and the sons of Israel sighed because of their bondage, and they cried out, and their cry for help because of their bondage rose up to God. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the sons of Israel, and God took notice of them. And while Moses might look content to be a stranger among the Midianites for the rest of his new life, God has other plans. Years pass, pharaohs come and go, and Israel's enslavement and suffering remains just as torturous. They keep calling out to God for the saving deliverance that was promised to them. And God, intentionally, decides to keep that promise. And that will mean a major interruption for the current course of Moses' life. So all in all, Moses' life teaches us a lot. His miraculous birth story reminds us to trust in God at all times, even through dangerous situations. His killing of the Egyptian reminds us that violence might solve problems for a second, but it actually contributes to a never-ending cycle of sin. And his time in Midian shows us that his passion for justice is important, only that justice should be used in accordance to God's will. Anything other than that is retribution for selfish gain. And as we go through Exodus, we'll see how all of these themes continue to build. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope you have a good day, and God bless.